It's time to get all timey-wimey again in 2020. But this time, we're traveling through time for climate change. That's right, message! 2067 is brought to us by director Seth Larney and stars Cody Smit-McPhee as Ethan Wyatt, a futuristic public service utility worker. He works on pipes and city lines and shit like that. The world has gone to shit in 2067. Apparently, the last plant on Earth died 20 years ago. So air has become pretty scarce, and the #1 resource on the planet is O2. There's also some type of sickness that has to do with this that many people suffer from. One of those people would be Ethan's wife. So when Ethan is given a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go 400 years in the future to retrieve a cure to this disease and figure out how we defeat this oxygen issue on the planet, he reluctantly jumps at the idea to save the world. However, upon arriving in the year 2472, he finds that this mission isn't going to be quite as clear-cut as he originally thought. 2067 is pretty clear in its message. Climate change, global warming, and all that shit is a bitch, and we're all gonna fucking die if we don't do something about it. Now, while this is a central part to the story, I will say that the vast majority of the movie doesn't really ram it down your throat. While the movie does have a message, it doesn't come across as a message movie for the most part. Filmmakers definitely want to get that message out there, but they also recognize that this is a movie and we need to be entertaining. And that's what they do for the most part, is entertain us with this fun little time travel ride. And that's what this is, a fun little time travel ride. It presents us with the twists and turns that we expect from a time travel movie. There's not really a whole lot with the story that's very new or that we haven't seen before, but it is told in a very interesting and entertaining way. However, much like with many time travel movies, upon closer inspection, some of the plot threads start to fall apart. This tends to happen with pretty much any movie that dives too deep into time travel. There's too many variables, there's too much stuff that can just change and get wonky, and it is rare that a movie is able to keep up with all the differences and changes that can happen due to time travel. And 2067, unfortunately, is no different. There are quite a few things that happen in this movie that you start to think, you know, that probably should have had a different effect somehow. Now, the movie does move at a fairly fast, entertaining pace, so you don't have a whole lot of time to nitpick these things. But like I said, afterwards, if you start to really dive into it, you start to see a whole lot of issues with it. I'm not going to drag the movie through the mud too much on that, because you get this from a whole lot of time travel movies. And while you are watching the movie, it's not quite as apparent because the movie does move at that really good pace. Now, while the story's nothing we haven't seen before, it is still pretty good. It's entertaining overall. However, the ending is going to be very divisive to some. Remember how I said that message, while yeah, it's there, it's not really in your face too much throughout the movie? Well, that is till the ending. In the end, it is right there, bam, on full display in your face. And that's fine, it's whatever. The fact that they put the message so predominantly there at the end doesn't bother me. What did bother me a bit is that it was at the expense of the ending of the movie. There's some inconsistencies with the way this movie ends, some things that just don't quite add up. As a whole, it's okay. It ain't great, but it's okay. As it's ending, you're just kind of like, all right, yep, they went that way, they decided to do that. And even the idea of what they decide to do in the ending of the movie, I didn't have as much of a problem with. In fact, I had thought of this earlier in the movie and said, why aren't they doing something like this? It's more the last minute decision to do it, and how quickly it happens doesn't really add up to me. It really just stood out. Regardless of how good the pace was in that moment, I couldn't help but think about this thing. But like I said, it was okay. It wasn't as satisfying as I'd hoped, but it was okay. The movie has some good direction overall by Seth Larney. Everything here looks really nice. This is a very solidly made movie technically. The special effects, which there are quite a few of them, do look pretty good. There are a few times that something stands out just a bit, but as a whole, I'd say they're pretty good. Now, there are a couple of times while watching the movie that it came across as a bit low budget. It was really weird because it didn't look low budget, it was just kind of the overall feel within a few moments of the movie. There's only a couple of small parts of the movie, but during these small parts, it just kind of felt low budget. It didn't look bad. I mean, for the most part, everything looks pretty good here. But kind of the culmination of the music at that very moment, the shot, and maybe it was like a bad effect here or there, just made it come across as kind of low budget overall. I mean, I don't know why. I've seen really big movies that had shit parts, but this one, something about it stuck out just a little bit more to me. The movie didn't have a huge budget, which goes to say, for the most part, they did a really good job of putting what money they had on screen. And maybe that's what it was. They did such a good job for 98% of the movie that 2% that showed up that didn't look too hot really stood out. Either way though, the movie does look pretty good for the vast majority of its runtime. Our performances don't fare quite as well. At best, I would say as a whole, they're okay. Kodi Smit-McPhee as Ethan is pretty good here. The guy does a pretty good job. He portrays this character as very believable, and he is someone that you can get behind. However, not everybody else does quite as good. I would say that the vast majority of the other performances in the movie are anywhere from fine to okay. Nothing great, but they're not teetotal dog shit either. However, there are a couple of side characters that do really just stand out as bad. And overall, the acting here is a bit inconsistent. But the one saving grace to all of this is that a large portion of this movie is mainly centered around just Kodi Smit-McPhee's Ethan. There's large chunks of this movie that he's just like alone in the future. And since he does give the best performance in the movie, that does bode fairly well for the movie as a whole. Overall though, I would say that the performances here are just okay. And that's kind of the overall sentiment of this movie. Okay. I did have a good time with this movie. I enjoyed my time with it more or less. But as a whole, it's just okay. The performances overall are okay. The story as a whole is okay. The special effects are actually better than okay. They're overall pretty good. But as a whole, technically, this movie's okay. And while okay is better than bad, it's still just okay. And because of that, if you're interested, at best, check out 2067 on streaming.
Across the street.
This movie wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't anything great either. If you like sci-fi time travel kind of movies, but aren't too picky about their stories, then check out 2067. I don't think you'll be too disappointed. So there it is, guys, my review of 2067. If you enjoyed, want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Cleveland. The title of this movie to me is kind of odd. 2067. Yes, that is when part of this movie takes place, but the vast majority of the movie actually takes place in 2472. So I don't really get why they called it 2067, especially since that year, while yeah, it is where the movie starts and that is where part of the story takes place, it doesn't really hold that much relevance. In fact, in the story, the year 2472 would hold greater relevance than 2067. But I guess 2067 just rolls off the tongue better than 2472. Just not as sexy sounding as 2067. Plus, they wouldn't have been able to like do the title sequence with the 2067 and the 0 being the planet Earth. Wouldn't have worked out the same with 2472. There's no zeros there to have the Earth there to say, hey, that's what we're talking about here, saving the planet. Or something like that, who knows? I mean, maybe, I don't know. Save the fucking planet though!